So as people are rolling in, I have a special treat for you all. I cannot believe that I have Dr. Rachel Blackburn here with us. I know you were going to laugh because you're like the most humble human being that I've ever met in my life. Please don't cry, Rachel.
Woo, woo, okay. All right.
Okay. We need to calm down a little bit. So, little story. I met Rachel literally within my first year of career coaching and starting my business. And I remember that exact day vividly. So we obviously met virtually. We have yet to meet in person. It's going to happen, Rachel, very soon. I was sitting on my couch. I had just lost power and I was bored on LinkedIn. I happened to be, I think it was the premium career group. Rachel had posted a question. I just answered it. And all of a sudden, I get a DM from her. Basically, I was recommending that she, looks for a career coach because she was considering a whole bunch of options. And then I remember getting this DM sliding in saying, "Would that be you?" In the meantime, I'm messaging one of my mentors and saying, "Hey, there is this, professor in theater. She's very intelligent. She has a PhD. I think she would be a great fit for you." And this was like right at the same time, Rachel telling me that she wants to work with me. And then my mentor saying, "Well, maybe you need to go out of your comfort zone and stop pigeonholing yourself to working with people in tech and take a new challenge." And so, as much as I'm here today to share with you an amazing success story of how Rachel overcame her imposter syndrome, how she finally decided to pursue something that she loves, how she left a long career doing something that she loved at some point in time, but then woke up one day and decided, I could do more. As much as I helped her find her new sweet spot, we'll call it, she helped me overcome my own imposter syndrome. So it is an incredible story. And I think for those of you who are career transitioners, for those of you who are doubting yourselves, feeling like, I don't know if I'm qualified, or I don't know if I'm good enough to pursue a different role. I've been doing the same thing day in and day out, and I'm scared of losing my identity if I pursue something different. I don't know how to figure out what my next role is. I don't know how to rediscover my new passions. And I have no idea to articulate everything that I've done in a way that translates to a role that I'm excited about, but I'm so terrified of pursuing. So we're going to cover a lot of stuff. I want you to ask a ton of questions because you have, the opportunity for someone who actually lived it to share with you her experience. So Rachel, welcome. I am so excited to see you today.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine a better introduction. If I ever start rapping, I'm going to have you be my hype woman. That's obvious. So thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I mean, I think the world of you, Nada, and I'm sure anyone watching this knows that Nada knows what she's talking about and knows her stuff. So for me to even be a part of this conversation I take it as a great compliment. So thank you. Yeah.
You're
Excited
welcome,
to talk about
Rachel.
it.
So, maybe it would benefit the audience to understand a little bit. There's a quote that you shared with me after you went through my program where you mentioned that, no one ever tells you that you'd wake up in your 30s and 40s and you realize that you no longer love what you do. Can you tell us when that moment, became clear to you and what triggered it?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I mean, I will say there wasn't one singular moment. It was definitely, a combination of moments, but I remember the very first time I had a thought. I had just gotten this job teaching at a university, which was kind of the dream job. I mean, I should have been thrilled, excited, and I had just come off of being in grad school, being an extremely poor grad student, and I was so relieved to have this job, and I was so excited to actually take what I had learned and put it into practice. And funny enough, I was in Columbus, Ohio at the time, and the job that I was offered was in Columbus, Georgia. So I'm driving from Ohio, from one Columbus to another, and I'm driving down and I'm going along and I'm thinking about like, oh my gosh, what is my new life going to look like? I had never been to Columbus, Georgia. Not going to lie, I'd never heard of it before I was offered that job. And I was just wondering, what is this going to be like? And then as I'm driving along, your mind wanders. And suddenly I thought to myself, when is the last time in my life that I got to pick the city I lived in and then the job, as opposed to the job first? And it was one of those thoughts that kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, it was like, nope, let's push that away. Let's not think about that right now. We've got a new job. We're looking forward to that. Focus, Rachel. But it just wouldn't go away. And over time, I started envisioning like, okay, if I stay here and continue this, what will my life look like? And I had this vision of myself teaching the same classes over and over and over again and doing all the same exact work, 20 years from now that I was doing then. And I was also looking at my finances, and 7 years as a grad student is not an easy financial situation to live through, and particularly if you're in the humanities like I was. And I was just thinking about, I have these financial goals. I want to be able to travel more. I want to be able to spend more time with my family. I have other things, other pieces of who I am that exist outside of this career that are calling to me. And I was starting to see more and more clearly how sometimes those things were at odds with each other. And it was a matter of deciding, I need to be brave. I need to get enough courage in myself to say, what do I really want out of life? I mean, I know I've said this before, and I think I told you, like, no one ever warns you, like, by the way, even if you do get your dream job, and even if you do land in a really cool place with really cool people, everything could be perfect. But if the other aspects of your life are not being met, those needs aren't being met, you might start to feel the priorities shift underneath you. It's like tectonic plates. Like, it was an earthquake that was building, and I was getting rumblings and rumblings of like, maybe this isn't the dream fit that I thought it was, because I want other things. I want to save more money. I want to spend more time pursuing other hobbies and interests. And so, yeah, but it was definitely that moment in the car driving down.
Wow. That's insane. It kind of reminds me of when I was in consulting and I was, traveling back and forth between Toronto and Minnesota, 6 a.m. flight every single week, leaving my dog behind. And I remember, I would say probably the day before my flight, I was lying down, my dog was like cuddling with me, and I'm just thinking, what am I doing with my life? I'm chasing this promotion, I am with this big title, with this six-figure salary, but is that really what I want? Is it really worth it for me to just live a life, out of a suitcase? So that point about really paying attention that your career is in alignment to your lifestyle and what you want in terms of values is such an amazing thing that you're giving listeners in terms of an idea to figure out, let me do a self check here. Am I really happy?
Yeah, it's scary. It's very scary to kind of look at your life and say, what if I did away with the one thing that I thought I was really certain about? The one thing I thought I could kind of rely on and count on is like, well, I know what my career is, so I'll just kind of make everything else fit in around it, right? That's a very easy trap to fall into. But then as I worked with you and as I really started to kind of examine my life, more closely, I realized I didn't want to choose the career and then have all the other aspects of my life fit in around that career. I wanted to choose the life that I wanted, all the aspects of my life, and then make the career fit into that mold, you know. I was like, wait a minute, I got it backwards.
Well, why do you think you got it backwards though? What do you think contributed to that?
Oh man, such a great question. I mean, I'm sure this is very different for different people. I can only really, speak to my own experience, but I think there's a couple of major things. I think I fell in love with theater for a lot of different reasons when I was a young person. I hadn't even graduated high school yet, and I was already working in it. And for me, growing up where I grew up, it was like this tremendous outlet. It was a creative outlet. It exposed me to a lot of different languages, a lot of people that would fly in from other cities, other countries, and that I would work with. It seemed like this tremendous atmosphere for growth, and I fell in love with it. I mean, it was kind of like, it's like your first love in life. You kind of choose that person based on chemistry, and you don't really think about all the other things that might mean if this person were to be your partner. So it was a lot like that. But I also think there's something uniquely American also. I'm just going to say it. I think this is a kind of US based thing, that you're really sold the message that you need to pursue your passion. That's what you've got to do. Find what you love and then follow that. And that's exactly the trap that I fell into. I don't want to call it a trap. Sorry, let me scratch that. It's not a trap. I think it's a good place to start. But the problem is when Rick says he's a band orchestra geek. Oh, I totally understand. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's so easily done, right? And if I take the advice that the culture gives me, like, well, I found my passion, so this is easy, right? I just have to pursue this to the nth degree. And part of the problem in doing that is that you're choosing the topic that you love. You're choosing a subject you love, just like choosing a major in college. But you're not doing maybe some of the other thinking around, well, how does that translate to what my life looks like, what my lifestyle looks like, my finances, my ability to move around freely and find work wherever I go. For a long time, theater really sustained me because I love traveling and I love going places and seeing new places. And theater was kind of my excuse to do that. But as I'm sure is natural for a lot of people, you get older, you start prioritizing other things in your life. Theater just was not sustainable for me financially, among other things related to lifestyle. But I wouldn't say that I fell out of love with it. I think I just learned to recognize that in order for me to feel balanced and like a complete person, it means that I also need to devote time to friends and family and other interests and music. Actually, I'm right there with you, Rick. So yeah.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think, what people tend to forget is that our interests, passions, lifestyles change over time. And I feel like, true, there is that element of romanticizing, the passion. It needs to feel like we have butterflies when we figure out what it is that we love. There's so much pressure. I mean, I can tell you that even though I didn't grow up in the US or Canada, or even Europe, I grew up in the Middle East. There was a lot of this pressure of what do you want to be when you grow up? You got to figure out something that brings you tremendous joy. And I just didn't have the answer to that. I think that it's tough being a human being, you grow up without that guidance of, okay, you wake up in the morning, what is it that you're meant to do? And when you have no idea what that North Star is, and you hear a lot of noise on the outside, oh, maybe you should try this and maybe you should try that, it can feel very confusing. Do you feel that there is an element of upbringing or childhood that contributed to that confusion?
Well, Nada, I don't know if you realized what you said when you said it, but you actually said this. And I thought, oh my gosh, how did I never see this before? But you actually said, what do I want to be when I grow up? That's the
Yeah.
question we ask, right? Which
Yes.
automatically implies this is who you're going to become, right?
Yes.
This is your identity. This
And you're
is
not allowed to change. You got to make a decision, and that's
yeah,
it. If you change, then you're almost like, you almost feel like a fraud if you do, because everyone has all these expectations that you're going to fit in that mold, and you got to just stick to it. Don't disappoint everyone, because that's what happens when you change, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I was terrified to tell mentors who had given to me of their time, even, my own family being very emotionally supportive of me, throughout my career journey and pursuing something that was maybe not widely known as a stable field to be in. And it's amazing because I think we, a lot of us, without meaning to, even in being supportive, we fall into this idea that, like, yeah, I need to find my calling. I need to find this noble pursuit of what's going to sustain me through life, when a lot of people just have jobs and they look at their jobs as jobs, and they're actually a lot happier because they can clock out at the end of the day and then go do whatever they want, and that makes them happy. Their life makes them happy. It's not their work. And I think too, it's funny because wow, I'm still stuck on, I never thought about that question before, but what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think it's also easy, as the person doing it, to not only be worried about disappointing people in your life and around you that have been part of helping you create that career, but I think there's also, what is that fallacy, Nada? Like, where you're like, I've invested so much into this. It's so,
Oh, yeah, I want to cash out, all of those, years of experience. I don't want to feel like I'm starting over. That's something that I often hear from people. And I felt too, because I worked so hard to get into like one of the big five consulting companies. And finally, after so many jumps within the consulting world, hit that six figures, bought a condo, and now, okay, so I have to figure out another role, but that might mean I have to start all the way at the junior level. And so for me, leaving all that behind when I'm tied to a condo and all these responsibilities was definitely scary. Yes, the sunk cost fallacy.
thank
Love
you.
it.
Yes, thank you. That's it. That's exactly what I was going for. My husband says it all the time. The sunken cost fallacy. I've put in so much of my life into this. I'm just swiping it away if I choose something else. But what you have to realize is that's actually, all those things are going to play into your next move. You're not throwing it away. It has helped shape who you are. It's helped shape the skills you have. It helps, you have what I believe ultimately is a competitive edge over someone who doesn't have that background. It's pretty easy to find, someone that has an MBA. It's pretty easy to find someone that has business experience. But how many employers can hire someone who's, had 23 years of being, like Rick here, 23 years of being a band orchestra guy? You're going to bring a different set of skills to the table that no one else could, specifically because of that unique background you have. So instead of seeing it as a loss or a sunken cost, seeing it as, actually, that's actually the steps in the bridge that's going to get me to the next place, and changing your mindset about that, I think, is key.
Yes, yes. Band director, educator for 23 years. And I'm just going to embarrass Rick and say that he just did a TEDx talk. So everyone should check out Rick's TEDx talk.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
All right. Which takes me to the point. So when you came to me, I'm sure you went through an emotional roller coaster trying to figure out what it is that you want to do. What would you say was a light bulb moment for you throughout the process of figuring out what your sweet spot is? And what do you think was the mindset shift that made it super easy? Or I'm not going to say super easy, but the mindset shift that helped you move forward?
Oh gosh, well, I have to credit you, Nada, because you were a big part of that. I mean, I'm not just like blowing smoke here, but like, I
See,
mean,
now
really
I'm getting embarrassed, but anyway, keep going.
no, but here's what you did. Here's what you did. I came to you and I said, listen, I may not be your easiest client here. Like, I am totally lost. I thought I knew what my purpose was. I thought I knew what I wanted from my career. And now I'm realizing that's not it anymore, but I don't have like a clear other goal. It's not like it was replaced by something else. It just kind of fell apart because I realized I want so many other things that this career can't give me. And I remember there was a moment where you gave me a list of about 7 or 8 different jobs, and they were fluid in terms of the field. They could have, those jobs that you gave me on that list, they could have existed in any industry, really. But you were like, this is 7 or 8 other things you could do. Why don't you let me know? Take a look at this list, look at some job postings under those titles, and see what you like, see what you think. And you have no idea how much that really helped me, in large part, kind of overcome the imposter syndrome. But also when I realized that the jobs were not tied to any particular industry, it kind of helped me see myself in a new way, because I was able to kind of take myself out of an industry I'd been a part of. And instead of tying who I was or what I can do to that industry or that space or that field, I was able to say, oh, wait, she thinks I can do all these things because of my skills that I have, that really could have come from any background in some ways. But it's like it in a way it freed me of being locked into, like, I have to be in this space or I have to be in this field, because if what I bring to the table is a different perspective, then actually that becomes, I think I said this before, but that becomes the advantage rather than the thing holding you back. So it was it may not seem like a big deal to you, Nada, but to me it was huge, because you just hand me this list that you just probably did off the top of your head too. Like you had done it in 5 minutes. Like, oh, she could do this, she could do
Well,
that.
it may
Yeah, she
have,
could do that too.
truthfully, it may have seemed from the outside 5 minutes, and that's the thing that a lot of my clients don't realize. But back then, I did not have a rigorous, systemized way of doing this as much as I do now. I think you're one of the people who really helped me build a process and a system. You and, I will say, 200 others. But that was the beginnings of me developing what I call a career archetype quiz, that basically got you all to do all these different exercises, because my way of learning, and I think we all have different forms of intelligence. I'm a very intuitive person, and I need to get a feel of the person. It's not, to me, just based on, yeah, this is the title and these are the tasks, that I do. I want to know who is Rachel holistically. um, what are her values? What gets her excited? What was she like as a child? I mean, that story that you shared with me, and I still remember it to this
Oh
day.
no, I think I know what's
Listen,
coming.
I'm just gonna tell everyone. You
no.
were on stage. It was your first, public speech. It was on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was, I think Martin Luther King's Jr.'s family, right? They were there in the audience, and I'm just like, wow. I was just like visualizing it all. It's weird the way it happens in my brain. Like, sometimes people tell me, "Do you have some kind of formula in terms of helping people figure it out?" But it's just like I take all this data and it just comes together, and I'm just visualizing and seeing the person where they are and where they belong, and that's how I come up with these different options. But there's a meta concept here, Rachel, because I was only doing this with people in tech, and you helped me realize that that process can actually work for all professions, not just in tech. And so, in a way, me helping you transition into another role helped me transition into another role and expand so that I'm helping, a whole bunch of people. But yeah, I've always thought that, I maybe it was the rebellion in me, I was a rebel and I just didn't like being boxed in and didn't like being labeled as consultant or whatever. And I just felt like just because my title is X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that I can't do this and I can't do that. And I think I keep attracting people who are similar to me, who I work with. You shared with me as well that it wasn't just theater that you were doing all this time. You were doing all these odd jobs. And even as, an assistant professor in theater, you were like being very proactive and you were working with other administrators. You were involved in facilitating activities out of school. And I realized, just because someone is coming in and their job description says XYZ doesn't necessarily mean that's all they do. And so that's where the concept got formulated. But yeah, the idea of shortlisting options I find is helpful because I feel like another blocker that people have is feeling overwhelmed. If you could go and you could find a directory of all the jobs that exist out there, but how would that make people feel? Right? I mean, imagine that. Like you're sitting in a restaurant, someone gives you a menu with like 200 items. At the beginning, you're excited. You're like, oh my God, you have all these options. And then you sit there and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to choose.
Choice paralysis, like, oh man, too many things. I don't know what to do. Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, as we worked together, it occurred to me that I was probably starting to push myself a little bit into the same trap that I had been in before, which was thinking I need to replace this grand purpose, calling, immense passion that sustained me for 20, 25 years in the same industry with another one of that, like it was like, wait a minute, why am I trying to replace one grand passion with another one when that's actually what led me down this road to find myself where I am now, right? Like we think that we need to find the next great, I mean, I guess it's like divorcing someone and then being like, okay, now I need to find the next love of my life. Nobody does that.
You gave me that amazing analogy, Mr. Perfect instead of Mr. Right Now.
Yes.
Or Miss, or for those of you who are, the other gender, Miss, Perfect, or Miss, Right Now.
Yeah, whoever is your jam, but
yeah, whoever is your jam, with all the pronouns.
But that's like saying like, oh, okay, they weren't the love of my life. Let me find the real love of my life, right? That's no one does that. Thing. Yeah, you have to kind of. I think. Well, I mean, I guess if I follow the analogy, I think a career, just like a relationship, is something that's built over time. Little by little, it's with a lot of empathy.
You got to date a lot to figure out what you want. Not implying anything here. You got to try different things.
Yeah. I mean, rare is the person that ends one big relationship and then jumps right into another big relationship. Right?
You're not going to know that chocolate ice cream tastes good if you don't try it. Or maybe it doesn't taste good.
Right. You got to be taken to a Baskin Robbins where they have 32 flavors and really just, I mean, see what's out there. I knew one of the things that made me really want to work with you, Nada, was that you did have this expertise that was totally outside of my own experience. And I remember thinking, well, that's what I need. I need someone who can show me what the rest of the world looks like in terms of potential jobs out there that I might actually really be happy in doing, because it wasn't even a matter of feeling lost anymore so much as it was, I don't really know what else is out there. And there could be something that I really enjoy doing. And the job I have now, I really enjoy doing, but I also really enjoy the fact that at the end of the day, I'm not fretting over students and I'm not worried about them, like, oh, my student told me they're going to some big party and I think they're going to drink. And I'm really like worried about them the whole weekend. Like, oh God, I hope they don't hurt themselves or something, And this job frees me up in so many ways, but it doesn't mean that I enjoy it any less or that I care any less about it. It's just that I have a much healthier mental balance with my work now. And by also kind of slowly letting go of the idea that my work defines me, it's actually liberated me so much more, because now I can be so many other things than I would have before. If I hadn't made the choices I did, if I hadn't worked with you, I think, I always would have thought, I guess I'm just a theater person. I can make theater, I can teach it, and I can write about it and talk about it. But, if I hadn't challenged myself to do something different, I wouldn't have seen myself in a much more holistic light, where actually that wonderful career that I had and that I still engage in certain ways. I mean, it's not like I've left it totally behind. I haven't gone like cold turkey, but now I can engage with it at my pleasure. And it really is about my pleasure with the work now. It's not about, oh, I've got to publish so many things so that I can get tenure, or I've got to get that next promotion, or I've got to push myself because it's my work and it's tied to my income. Now I can just do it for fun.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And what you have shared is really, drives the point in terms of what are the three areas, what are the three questions that we need to answer when it comes to identifying our career sweet spot. And that's where I started systemizing my career archetype model and realized, you know what? It's not enough to actually just love what you do, because there are other sides of us as human beings. The other aspect of it is what type of social impact do you want to make, right? And then what type of environment or what type of collaboration style or what type of organization would be the right fit. So those are all questions that need to be answered versus just thinking about, well, I enjoy doing these things, but what if they clash with the way you live your life? Amazing. So I am curious, what makes it even more difficult for someone from academia to go through a career transition?
Oh man. Well, yeah, academia is definitely its own animal. I think there's a few factors involved in this. I think part of it is definitely the sunken cost fallacy, because when I look back on my grad school years, not only was I barely scraping by financially, but if you look at it under the lens of, those were 7 of my prime adult years that I could have spent making a lot more money somewhere else had I made a different choice, right? You're kind of looking at it as a loss on 2 levels. Not only did I hardly save any money, but I also could have been doing a lot better for myself had I been elsewhere or chosen a different path. I think too that academia, in a lot of ways, kind of presents itself as a calling, similar to, like, say, clergy or like religious figures, or I think academia attracts a lot of really empathetic people, and I hope that I'm among them when I say that, because it's usually someone who wants to make the world better, either through teaching the next generation of up and comers, or it's through, not only sharing of knowledge, but I think it's also the research and thinking like, well, if I can open up knowledge about this area, maybe that could improve things too. And so it's really especially hard to leave the idea that I was doing something that made the world better, because, for a lot of people who are service oriented, that's your heart and your soul, and I think I would imagine it's probably similar for people who have pursued like not-for-profit careers, where they're, and social workers. And there's so many other careers like this where you feel compelled, like, no, I really want to make an impact, a social impact. But, as I've happily discovered, academia is not the only place you can do that. I still teach in my job, actually. I still teach. I still share knowledge that I think helps the world be a better place. And funny enough, I get to do not-for-profit work through my for-profit. Oh, that's really kind. Someone
From
oh,
Susan.
yay! I'm glad I hope I'm inspiring somebody. Cool. But, kind comments, thank you. But yeah, I mean, the fact, it blows my mind that I get to do not-for-profit work as a part of my for-profit job. And that's something that isn't talked about a lot. In fact, I think if someone had told me, there are companies some companies, maybe not all, but some, that offer a nonprofit organizations an account for their product or their software or whatever it might be. And the company I work for does this. So I actually volunteer my time on the job while I'm being paid to do my work and my other work, where I actually get to talk to these not-for-profit organizations, and I get to help them. I get to teach them, using our software product. So I still feel like I'm getting that reward of like, oh, cool, I'm helping people, right? Because that's at the end of it all. You shave away the industry, you shave away the job title, you clear out everything at the most basic level. I just like helping people. It makes me feel useful. I sound like my Jewish grandmother. It makes me feel useful. I help people. They get something. I get something. But like, that's just who it is. That's who I am. At the end of the day, I just like helping others, and that can be done in so many places. And I wish I had known more about what was out there, that I could. There's a million options for where I can do this kind of thing.
Yes. Well, there are two things. First of all, I want to let the cat out of the bag, and I think we've been keeping people in mystery in terms of what you transitioned to.
Oh.
So you went from being in academia to, first of all, breaking into the corporate world, and not only just the corporate world, but a tech company on top of that, in a learning consultant role, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my official title,
Yeah.
learning consultant. Which sounds
And
pretty cool, doesn't it?
you're around UX designers and UX researchers. For those of you who are, in the tech world. Um, that's a huge jump, Rachel. That's a very big jump. How did you feel like starting your job? Was there an element of fear? Was there an element, and I think Rick is asking a question here. He's asking, could you talk a little bit more about imposter syndrome in terms of feeling or not qualified, changing industries out of academia? And I feel that with some clients, I mean, I'll tell you a story. I had a client who was very brilliant, worked at Meta, engineer, and had this fear of pivoting into a role that is not that far away from engineering, which is product management. And one of the big things that was reoccurring is, what if I fail in my new role? And so, can you talk to us a little bit about whether you felt that way when you first started out? And if you did, how did you overcome that feeling?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, straight up, of course I felt scared. Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't,
It's
right?
normal. I mean, I was scared working with you.
Oh, oh no,
Remember, how the heck am I going to write a resume for someone who has a PhD? That's how I
oh
felt.
no. Oh no.
I
Oh no.
did. I was
Don't let
so
the better
intimidated.
for you.
English is not my first language. I'm still new
Oh.
into my career coaching practice, and I'm writing a resume, for someone who's done so much in their career. It is a normal feeling, and it gets
Oh.
better. I'm still alive.
Well, goodness, I'm sorry. Well, first off, I have to say I laugh really hard anytime someone says like, "Oh, they were intimidated by my background or something," because I'm 4'11", so the idea that I could intimidate anybody is just ridiculous to me because, I mean, anyway. So there's that. Like, yep, I'll get you in the knee if you misrepresent my. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I definitely remember a moment where I turned to my husband and I said, "Oh my God, what have I done? I'm going to start in this job. I'm a fraud. They're going to find out I'm a fraud, that I don't know what I'm doing." And that was wrong in a couple of ways. One is I needed to trust the people that hired me, that they saw something in me, that they knew that I could do the work.
That's wise.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I have my moments, but so I mean, I needed to trust the people that hired me, for one. I wasn't giving them enough credit, which is totally on me. And then, second of all, as they started giving me things to do, I immediately felt a sense of relief because I could immediately see, like, oh, wait, this is exactly what I have been doing. I'm just doing it in a different context. That's it. You know, I mean, I remember like my first day, the woman who was training me for my job, incredible woman named Lisa, she was training me for this. And she said, hey, I'm going to give you a slide deck presentation. So like just a PowerPoint or a Google slide deck. And she said, can you just kind of proofread it? And, you know, if you have like some comments that you think will help make it better, just can you go through it for me? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And I was like, wait a minute, this is just like another teacher, you know, handing me their lecture for that day and being like, hey, do you see anything mistakes I should correct or whatever? I mean, I quickly realized like, oh, the activities that I'm doing are exactly the same. In fact, it was shocking how similar they were. It was just that it was within a different context. And so you kind of learn the context a little bit better as you go. But I mean, I think pretty much any company anticipates that there's also a little bit of a learning curve, you know, and that's true for anybody. Even if you've been in the specific role or industry up to that point, you still have to learn that new company. And every company has their own sort of culture and practices and ethos. And so, you know, there's going to be a learning curve, but you also have to trust yourself and trust that if you've gotten as far as you have already, you know, you're a smart person. You've got it together. They hired you for a reason. And, you know, it's funny because this is actually a question for if there's any academics in the chat, but like there's often a question that I think academia people feel even more so, which is, do I need to try to downplay my academic history? Does that make
Oh
me
my
look bad?
God.
You
Yes.
know, am I going to come off as somebody who can't hang with the corporate people?
And I've had people who tell me, should I take my letters, the PhD, off my resume because that might scare people, or that might make me feel like someone who, or give the impression that I'm someone who doesn't belong in the corporate world, that I'm too academic. There's a lot of that. But you know what's funny is I don't just hear that in academia, I hear that in other professions as well. I mean, I had a doctor who came from Nigeria and to Canada, and she removed all of her medical experience. So all she had, because she decided to attend a college just to help with the immigration process, all she had was her current enrollment in a college. And when I met her, her profile almost looked like a student. But then as I was talking to her, I just felt, man, there's a lot more to this person than on her LinkedIn profile. And as I dug deeper, I asked her this question. I said, hey, there's something missing. You've done more than what you're showing. And she was just in shock that I picked up on that. But it seems to be like a common myth that you got to just remove what you've done before. You have to downplay it. It might not be relevant. I wonder where that comes from.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely felt those insecurities myself. Those questions ran through my mind too. I think it's a human nature to you know, think like, okay, am I up to this? Definitely for those of us who may have come from the PhD world, I don't know about other people, but I definitely know for myself that the last thing I would ever want is for someone to see those letters on my name and then think like, oh, this is going to be some really stuffy intellectual person who isn't down to earth or who can't relate to others or thinks they're smarter than everybody else. Like, I don't think I'm smarter than anybody else. And also, I should say, there are a lot of dumb people who get PhDs. It's not
Oh my
Sorry,
God, Rachel.
I'm being recorded, but none of the people that I'm
I
friends with.
cannot keep a straight face hearing this.
It's not an indicator of intelligence. I think more than anything, I've come to see it as an indicator of persistence and an indicator that you can probably do some research. That's about it. That's where I think we can draw the line. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's insecurity. But what I've come to realize is that that's my strength. Again, instead of seeing it as something that holds you back, when I was first hired at my current company, one of the first things they said to me was, okay, we need you to make an advanced certification program. And I was like, advanced certification? Like, I'm new at this job, right? Like, maybe start me off on the basic certification or the foundational certification. Let me design that first. But they were like, no, we need the advanced one. But as I got into it, I realized, oh, wait, this is why they hired me, because I've done research.
And you designed curriculums in academia.
Yeah, I made a ton of classes, and that's exactly the skills I needed to do that work. So again, it was like, oh, wait a minute. Instead of being worried that this was going to hold me back, it was exactly what they wanted to see in my background for this role. And I would say, just again, I don't know why my analogies go to relationships, but like,
by the way, she's married and taken, so don't.
Yes, this is true. Very happily married, but yeah, but it's like the relationship where if you're in a relationship where you feel like you have to downplay who you are, then that's not the right relationship, right? And it's the exact same thing in the working world. If I have to downplay my intelligence or my experience with research or my experience with creating curriculum, then that means it's just not the right role for me, because you should want me for what I'm really good at. You should want me for my strengths. So you should display that proudly, because the right role will find that and will want that with you. They'll want your background and your experience and your education and all of that stuff to come with you. That's the right role to be in, much like a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
1,000%. And sometimes we stay. I feel like, for a lot of people, the biggest pitfall is that they try to rush the process. They want that quick win. And the thing is, you have to you have to grow as a person in order to achieve a higher level goal, right? And the thing is, you've accumulated these bad habits over the years. It takes time to actually overcome these fears and habits. And so many times when people come to me and ask me, how long is it going to take to help me land a job? Or they'll say, oh, so I think the problem is my resume. I think I just need to tweak it. And if that ends up being fixed, I'm basically going to get a job. And I'm just like, these are just tools. Really, what needs to change? These are just mechanisms to help you grow as a human being. They're not basically the answers to help you get there. Did it take you a day to land this job?
No, not at all. No, it took some time.
Do you feel that you needed that time in order to go through that growth and land it? Or do you regret that it took longer than you wanted to?
There's a couple of things I want to say around this really quickly. One is that I feel like first I should just acknowledge that we are in a capitalist society and we do need the money to live. So
absolutely,
I can totally understand. And I had that panic too of like, what if I don't find a job by the time this job ends? When do I quit? When do I decide to move on? I mean, there's a lot of that stuff. And I think that's perfectly reasonable, given that we all need income to to get along in life. And some of us are single, some of us maybe don't have a partner that supplements with a second income. So I mean, there's a lot of factors involved, right, in someone's life. But I will say that probably you're right. Like at the end of the day, the things like your LinkedIn profile, your resume, these are just tools that try to distill who you are in a very concise way. And at the end of the day, I think I did need time to adjust my mindset. I really had to gain confidence because if someone had, let's say I had been in an interview the day after I decided, okay, I want to do something different, I would have been the last person who could have told them what I was good at, or what I could feasibly do in another context. I mean, it would have been really difficult to articulate that. And I needed time to build my confidence and to believe that I was capable of transitioning to something else. And I think ultimately that was the biggest change for me, was a mental one. Like anyone can just rewrite their resume, sure. Well, a lot of us need help, like I did, and you come into play. But but like, I mean, it also helps to have experts.
In the grand scheme of things, that's probably the smallest thing that you need to overcome, I think, is what you're saying, right? And and you didn't know how long it would take you to feel differently. It's hard to predict.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't think it works on a
There
deadline.
isn't like a clock where unfortunately I don't have a time predictor career test to tell you how long it's going to take you to not be afraid. In
Yeah.
case anyone is wondering, just the career
Yeah.
archetype quiz, but not the time predictor.
I did, it's funny. I do remember this one day I was teaching in my previous role, and one of my students came in, and I guess maybe she was just having like a rough day, and she came in and she let out this big sigh, and she goes, "Professor Blackburn, can we just like leave early today?" And I was, part of me was like, I'm not gonna lie, part of me took it personally and was a little bit hurt. My ego suffered in that moment. I was like, leave my class early when I'm tossing out all these golden nuggets of wisdom? What are you talking about? Why would anyone want to leave my class early, right? That was my ego talking. But part of me also thought, oh man, I'm ready to not deal with 18-year-olds as much, I think, in my life. Now, granted, eventually my nephews and nieces, they'll be that age, and I will love them very much at that point in time. But as my professional life, I was like, yeah, I'm with you, lady. I'm kind of feeling over this too. So, sometimes life nudges you, I think. And sometimes when push comes to shove, where I'm going with that, other than hopefully being funny, but also just making the point that, like, at some point you might find that life kind of pushes you a little bit, and you say, you know what? I just need to suck it up and move on with my life. I need to do something different because this is no longer working for me. I'm probably not even that good at it anymore because my heart's not in it anymore.
1000%.
And I've just got to do what it takes. Sometimes you have to, I think there's something about like when you're in grief, which is actually not a totally removed analogy from what we're talking about here, because I feel like I did have to grieve my old career. I had to grieve this idea of who I was, and I had to grieve the loss of like Rachel, the theater professor. I had to say goodbye to her in some ways. Not completely, though. I didn't have to say goodbye to her completely. Who you are is who you'll always be, right? Like, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm an aunt, I'm all these things, and they will always be part of who I am, no matter what happens with respect to those various relationships and things in my life. But so in the same vein, I will always be a theater professor. There's always going to be that part of me that wants to say, by the way, did you know this in theater history? There's always going to be that part of me, but it doesn't mean that other parts of me can't move on to do things that are maybe just better suited to where I am in my life at this moment in time.
Absolutely. Those are wise words. I
Like,
think, there's a lot of wisdom here, honestly. I think we forget that we're not Chat GPT. There isn't a predictive algorithm to figure out, you know what, I'm going to wake up the next morning and I'm going to feel overwhelmed. And that's what I tell a lot of my coaching clients. There will be moments where you're just going to need to take a break, and you're just going to have to stop staring at your screen and force yourself to sit there and remember what you've done. You need to wait a little bit till you're in that state of flow and just allow your body to naturally go through these motions. I've learned myself that anxiety comes from us trying to rush ourselves into doing something when we're not ready. And
Mm.
sometimes we just need to be ready to take action. There's also another spectrum where we can be numb and lack self-awareness. And sometimes it is healthy to actually go under pressure, because pressure is what creates diamonds.
Wise words yourself, Nada. I mean, so true. No, I
We're trying to
mean,
get along.
no, no, I love it. No, I love hearing all the brilliant things you say. Trust me. Yeah, I mean, so true, right? Like we, with job applications come job rejections.
Yeah.
And when you get so many of those in a row, and I definitely had those days myself, you know, I'd get like maybe 3 or 4 rejections, which are very polite emails that say, "Oh, thank you for applying to this, but we've decided to move forward with another candidate." And you're like, that's another one in the bin, in the dustbin there. Um, and you get so many of those in a row, it's hard not to feel it and to feel like, am I making the wrong decision? Am I applying to the wrong kinds of jobs for me? Have I made a mistake? It's very easy to point to oneself, but what I would say is, I mean, yeah, it's good to think about that and to think like, okay, is this what I really, want to do? I mean, could I maybe find more success if I pivot in some way? Possibly. But at the end of the day, I think back to this kind of idea of like your grief process, I think you have to find your anger sometimes. You have to find your feistiness and say, no, you know what? It's their loss. I bring a lot to the table. And if they don't see that, that's on them, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, definitely. I took breaks. I definitely took breaks. There were times where I would say, okay, I'm just going to pause for 1 week. For 1 week, I'm not going to think about job applications. I'm going to enjoy other parts of my life and friends and talk to people I care about. And I'm going to do that. Do things that feed my soul for a while. And then when I've got my confidence back up a little bit, feeling a little bit better, let's dive back in. I think that's totally a natural and probably very, very helpful thing for people to do. But also in that process, I think it helped me to, instead of feeling like, oh, it's me against the world or it's me against corporate America or whatever it might be, instead of feeling that way, to find my feistiness and say, actually, no, you know what? I'm as arrogant as this might sound, you have to remember that you're a gift. You are a gift. Everybody, I believe that about everyone in the world. I think everyone has some superpower, probably multiple superpowers. And you're going to bring that with you wherever you go, whatever job you're doing, you're going to bring you to it. And that's an automatic advantage over anyone who's not you. So, remember that in the process too. And don't be afraid to get angry about it, because I think that's a really helpful antidote to the feeling scared and grief process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to bring the conversation full circle and mention the last element, other than figuring out what your next career is without feeling like you're losing your identity, and understanding that it may not be the ultimate, last role that you're ever going to do in your life. And we coined, the term lily pad. That was your idea, and I integrated that into my program. By the way, Rachel had a huge influence into my coaching program. She even edited some of my video scripts. So, I'm grateful for that. Definitely learned a lot from you and others as well. But coming full circle, part of branding yourself, and this is what I tell people, whether I coach career coaches, entrepreneurs who are building their brands or job seekers who are trying to build their brands. Building your brand is not tied to a task. It's not tied to a process. It shouldn't talk too much about process. Chat GPT can do a process. They're hiring a person who has charisma, a person who has values, a person who has thoughts and feelings and emotions. And sometimes we forget to share that in our messaging, whether it's in our resume, whether it's in our interviews. We forget to be ourselves. And I think the big lesson here is just be yourself and you'll figure it out. You'll learn, you'll grow. And if you found your tribe, they're going to be patient with you and help you. And, here's a meta concept. When I met Rachel, I felt like, what is it that I can help, someone who is very academic and is amazing in writing? But she has her areas of expertise. I have my area of expertise. And again, that goes to you when you all get intimidated. What is it that I have to offer to someone who's an executive or someone who is known for X, Y, and Z? Well, there is an area that you need to compliment them on. And so that is the big lesson. Amazing. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe that we're already at the top of the hour. Rachel, can you believe that? Oh my goodness.
No, I cannot.
Well, oh my goodness.
I'm always flies with you because you're delightful. So
thank you, Rachel. My camera just blurred out. Maybe it's covering up my tears falling. Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you so much, Rachel. I am so proud of you. I always love seeing how happy you are in the company that you're at, bringing in so much value. You have a very courageous story. You've gone through a lot, putting yourself through, your graduate degrees, getting your PhD, and then making that brave decision to leave a career behind after so many years and pursue something that is more in alignment with who you are today. And, thank you for being such a huge influence to my entire curriculum. And, for always being a great, supportive client and friends, and, for giving us your time today. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Oh gosh, thank you, Nada. Nada, who led me out of the wilderness. I mean, I was so lost when I came to you. And if any of you are feeling that, it's totally natural and probably more common than you might realize. We all hit a point where we go, oh man, I think my life's about to blow up. And if it wasn't for you, Nada, I don't know that I would have found my way. I mean, maybe I would have, but it probably would have taken 10 years and a lot of horrible jobs later, right? So you saved me in a lot of ways, and I will always appreciate you so much for that. And you were the perfect person to help me in so many ways.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. So feel free to connect with Rachel on LinkedIn. Check out the amazing things that she does at her organization. If any of you are either embarking on a career transition, confused, need a process, a step-by-step process to go through this, if you are having trouble articulating your experience, I have a storytelling bootcamp. Don't be shy. Send me a DM. I can tell you all about it. And if you want to learn about more of these events, feel free to DM me your email address. We can put you on my mailing list to notify you whenever we have an event. And you can also hit subscribe on YouTube in order to see more of my videos and content. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening.